My name is Evelyn Vance and I am 33 years old. 2 weeks ago, my mother rang my doorbell for the first time in 9 years. She stood on my porch in a sage green trench coat holding a small carry-on suitcase and a folded piece of paper. That paper did not contain an apology. It was a list, typed out, black ink, neat bullet points. Every single line ended with a dollar sign. The grand total was $945,000. She did not say she was sorry. She did not ask to see her grandchildren. Instead, she looked me in the eye and said, "We need to talk about the family's future." But there was something my mother didn't know. I had been keeping a list of my own for 9 long years. Every birthday card she returned unopened, every voicemail she let go to static, every toxic text message my sister sent about me behind my back. 31 items in total, all meticulously labeled, dated, and secured in a forest green binder that I kept locked in the bottom drawer of my desk. She brought a list of what she wanted from me. I brought a list of what she had done to me. Before we dive into the dark reality of what happened next, if you are new to their secret stories, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. And while you are at it, drop a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I read every single one of them. Let me take you back to the summer I turned 24, the summer my family decided I was no longer one of them. Oak Haven, Pennsylvania. Population 2,200, give or take, 1 Methodist church, 1 local barber, 1 greasy spoon diner where the vinyl booth smelled of stale coffee and fried onions no matter what hour of the day you walked through the door. That was my entire world until I turned 18. My father, Arthur, worked at the granite quarry off Route 9 for 31 years. Same shifts, same dirt-caked work boots, the same tired, quiet nod when he stepped through the front door at exactly 5:42 every evening. My mother, Miriam, ran our household and the church's altar guild with absolute military precision. She coordinated the Harvest Festival. She ran the prayer network. She dictated exactly who brought which dish to every single potluck, and absolutely nobody dared to argue with her. My sister Chloe was 4 years younger than me in everything I wasn't. She was loud, fiercely confident, the kind of girl who was crowned festival princess and made a grand show of acting completely shocked by it. My mother worshipped the ground she walked on. My father called her his little ray of light. I, on the other hand, was the quiet observer. I was the child who washed the dinner dishes without being asked, scored perfect marks on every advanced algebra exam, and never once received a party for either. I don't say this out of self-pity or bitterness. I say it because you need to understand the underlying mathematics of our household. In our family, affection was a strictly rationed budget, and Chloe was the line item that always got fully funded first. When I was 18, I earned a scholarship to Penn State, a full ride. I was the very first Vance to ever set foot on a college campus. My mother packed my single suitcase and slipped a card inside, the kind with dried wildflowers on the cover and her elegant cursive on the back. "Come home soon, you belong here." I kept that card for 15 years. It still sits in my desk drawer right next to the forest green binder. That card was the very last kind thing she ever wrote to me. I met Julian Thorne during the spring semester of my junior year in a quantum mechanics lecture hall. He sat 2 rows ahead of me, solving complex wave equations as casually as if he were scanning a morning newspaper. He was calm, methodical, and entirely unhurried. Julian was a mechanical engineering major with a minor in data science, attending on a partial scholarship from the steel-dusted suburbs of Pittsburgh. His mother, Martha, was a retired county archivist. His father had walked out when Julian was just 4 years old, leaving Martha to raise him entirely on her own. She worked 2 jobs until Julian turned 16, and then she scaled back to 1 job so she could volunteer at 3 different community centers. Julian was biracial. He carried his mother's deep, expressive eyes, his father's sharp, defined jawline, and a rare way of listening to you that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our very first date was at a humble falafel cart parked near the university library. He paid with crumpled dollar bills. I paid with dimes and quarters. We split a cherry soda and sat on a stone bench talking until the campus lights flickered on. He told me he wanted to build something of his own. He wasn't entirely sure what yet, but something that solved a real, systemic problem. I told him I wanted a career where the spreadsheets actually meant something. He smiled and said that meant we were starting off on the right foot. We dated for 3 steady, quiet, beautifully unremarkable years. In all that time, he met my parents exactly twice. The first time, my mother smiled far too widely, her eyes completely cold, and persistently called him Jonathan instead of Julian. The second time, she used his correct name but refused to make eye contact when she spoke. Both times, my father shook his hand stiffly and said almost nothing at all. I tried to convince myself it was just small-town awkwardness. They just needed time to adjust to someone new. Chloe was the only one honest enough to speak the truth. During Thanksgiving dinner, she leaned close and whispered, "He's sweet, Evelyn, but Mom is never going to accept this. You know that, right?" I didn't know it, not yet. Julian proposed on a cold Tuesday night. There was no elaborate ring at first, just an honest conversation at the laminate table in our cramped apartment near the campus edge. He looked at me and said, "I want to build a life with you. I want to create something lasting with you. Will you let me?" I said yes before he could even finish the sentence. I called home that very night. My mother picked up on the third ring. When I shared the news, the phone line went entirely dead for 8 seconds. I counted every single tick of the clock. "You need to think very carefully about what this choice means for this family, Evelyn," she said. No congratulations, no asking to see a ring, just a cold, veiled warning. My father picked up the extension, cleared his throat twice, and said absolutely nothing. 2 days later, a text from Chloe popped up on my screen. "Mom has been devastated and crying since you called. Are you happy now?" I actually was for the very first time in my life, but I didn't text that back. 2 weeks after that phone call, a heavy envelope arrived. It wasn't an email or a text, it was a physical letter. Miriam Vance's unmistakable, sharp cursive on pale gray linen paper. She wrote 4 paragraphs. The final paragraph read, "If you proceed with this marriage, you are drawing a line between us and you. We cannot condone this. We will not be in attendance. And if you choose to walk down that aisle, do not expect to ever walk back through our front door. He is not one of us, Evelyn. He never will be." There it was. She had drawn her line in black ink on expensive linen paper, and she fully expected me to fall in line on her side of it. I read the letter 3 times, folded it neatly, and placed it inside a simple manila folder. I didn't fully understand why I was keeping it at the time, but some instinct deep inside me, the analytical part that archives tax forms and catalog files, told me to hold on to the proof. So I held on to it. We were married at the Allegheny County Courthouse on a rainy Friday afternoon in October. 10 guests attended, all of them close friends and all from Julian's side of the aisle. His mother, Martha, flew in from Pittsburgh with a heavy garment bag and a tin of fresh-baked lemon squares. She pinned a delicate silk flower to my collar, took my hands in her warm ones, and said, "Welcome to our family, sweetheart." No father walked me down any aisle. There wasn't even an aisle to walk down. There was only a tiled hallway under buzzing fluorescent lights, a local magistrate who mispronounced our names, and a modest dinner at a Greek taverna afterward. We pushed 4 wooden tables together, and Julian's old college roommate gave a toast that made everyone laugh so hard Martha spilled her water. My wedding dress cost $180 from a thrift shop on Grand Ave. It was simple, white, and fit me perfectly. Julian wore a charcoal suit he had found on a clearance rack. We looked like 2 people who had started the most important chapter of their lives on a shoestring budget, because we had. That night back in our quiet apartment, I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at my bouquet, $6 worth of grocery store daisies, and my hands began to tremble. Not from regret, but from pure, unadulterated grief. I had just taken the biggest step of my life, and the 2 people who had brought me into this world didn't care enough to even watch. A week later, I mailed a small envelope to Oakhaven. Inside was our official wedding photo, Julian and me standing on the stone courthouse steps, grinning widely under a shared umbrella. I wrote a brief note on the back, "We are happy. I hope you can find it in your hearts to be happy for us one day." The envelope returned exactly 11 days later. Across my handwriting was a harsh, red stamp, "Return to sender, refused." I stared at that red ink for a long time. Then I opened the manila folder, placed the photo inside, and wrote in red pen, "Item 2, wedding photo returned unopened." That was the official birth of the binder. Our first year of marriage was by far the heaviest. I called my mother 4 times. I hit voicemail every single time. I left short, incredibly disciplined messages, the kind where you weigh every syllable because you know it might be the last words of yours she ever deigns to hear. Hi Mom, just calling to check in. We're doing really well. Julian accepted a position at a software firm downtown. I'm currently studying for my certified public accountant exam. I miss you. Call me back whenever you're ready. She never once called back. I sent a card for her birthday, a card for my father's birthday, and a card for Christmas. All three returned to my mailbox bearing that same cold red stamp. My father sent exactly one text message that February, 4 brief words, your mother needs time. That was it, no follow-up, no check-in. Those 4 words sat in my message history like an anchor I couldn't drag up. That spring, Chloe posted a bright family photo on her social media page. My mother, my father, Chloe, and her partner at the time, they were all beaming under a backyard canopy. The caption read, Sunday dinner with my favorite people. I wasn't in the photo. I hadn't even been invited to the dinner. I didn't print out the screenshot to torture myself. I printed it because I had begun an archive. Every returned card, every unanswered call log, every piece of hard evidence that my family had collectively decided I no longer existed. I transferred everything from the manila folder into a proper forest green 3-ring binder with neat plastic dividers. He is not one of us. My mother's voice would echo in my mind at the most random times while standing in the checkout line at the dentist or at 2 in the morning when the apartment was dead silent and Julian was breathing softly beside me. I wanted the words to stop stinging. They never stopped entirely, but they grew numb. The binder, however, grew thicker. By our 2nd year, Julian quit his secure corporate job. It wasn't a reckless gamble. He had a meticulously calculated plan. For 6 months, he had been developing a prototype on nights and weekends, an automated audit and compliance platform for independent medical practices, the kind of software that made complex regulatory filings and internal audits affordable for small clinics that couldn't hire a full-time compliance officer. He understood the architecture of compliance. I understood the architecture of finance. Together, we grasped the exact problem no one else wanted to tackle, making regulatory paperwork painless for operations with fewer than 50 staff members. He set up a crude desk in our damp garage, complete with 2 monitors, a noisy space heater, and a whiteboard we bought at a local yard sale for $12. I would come home from my job as a financial analyst every evening, warm up some soup, and sit right beside him modeling cash flow and pricing structures until midnight. I built the subscription models, I drafted the regulatory checklists, I stress-tested every single module against federal compliance codes. Julian built the engine, I built the dashboard. Neither of us slept more than 4 hours a night. We officially launched AuditFlow 7 months later with just 4 small clients and a free trial period that crashed our servers twice on the very first day. That same year, I upgraded the green binder. The contents were overflowing. I bought heavy-duty tab dividers for each consecutive year, labeling every new entry with red ink. Tab 1, Year 1, 7 items. I wasn't building a case for a courtroom. I wasn't plotting a grand moment of revenge. I was simply doing what I was trained to do, keeping immaculate records. Financial analysts do not discard documentation, ever. I began numbering the items and dating them with absolute precision because numbers do not lie and neither would I. Caleb and Maya arrived on a freezing Thursday morning in November. 6 pounds each with matching crowns of dark, curly hair. Maya screamed for 4 hours straight. Caleb slept right through the chaos. Julian wept. I had never seen him shed a single tear before. He held Maya in his left arm and Caleb in his right, stood by the frosted hospital window and whispered, "They are going to know they are loved every single second of their lives." Martha flew in the very next morning. She stayed for 2 weeks. She cooked double portions, scrubbed our kitchen, and rocked Caleb at 3 in the morning so I could nurse Maya. She brought a beautifully hand-crocheted blanket, pale yellow and cream, and a small silver bracelet for each baby engraved with their birth dates. That was what a grandmother looked like. I had sent Miriam the sonogram photos 5 months prior. Returned. I sent beautiful birth announcements with their infant photos. Returned. I sent a picture of Caleb sleeping soundly on Julian's chest and Maya gripping my finger. Returned. 3 more items added to the green binder. Items 14, 15, and 16. Chloe texted an acquaintance we both knew from high school. The acquaintance screenshotted the exchange and forwarded it to me without a word of comment. Chloe's message read, her kids are growing up without a real family. That is the sad choice she made. I sat in the dim nursery with that text glowing on my screen for 11 quiet minutes. Maya was asleep in her crib. Caleb was nestled in my arms. I could hear Martha in the kitchen humming a soft tune while washing baby bottles. My children had an incredible grandmother. Her name was Martha Thorne, and she traveled to see them every 6 weeks, never missing a milestone. I printed out my sister's text and filed it away. Item 17, red pen, dated. By year 4, the green binder held 19 distinct items. I want to be entirely clear about this. I did not keep that binder out of malice. I didn't flip through its pages at night to fuel some toxic fantasy of a final confrontation. Most weeks, I completely forgot it was even in my desk drawer, buried behind tax returns and old insurance policies. But every single time a new item arrived, a returned card, a forwarded screenshot, a transcribed voicemail that I couldn't bring myself to delete, I filed it. Print, label, date, red pen, tab. Julian asked me once, "Why do you keep all of that?" I told him the absolute truth. Because one day when the kids are old enough to understand, they might ask why they don't have grandparents on my side. I want them to have the cold, hard facts, not my subjective version, not their version, the receipts. He simply nodded. He understood receipts. He was an engineer. Engineers live by build logs. By that point, AuditFlow had 11 full-time employees. We had transitioned out of our garage and into a beautiful brick loft in Pittsburgh's Strip District. Julian worked 60 hours a week. I worked 40 hours at my corporate firm and another 20 managing AuditFlow's growing ledgers. We hired a reliable part-time nanny for the twins. We ate dinner together at 6:30 p.m. every single night without exception. The heavy silence from Oak Haven had simply become a natural condition of our lives, like the changing seasons. Some days I felt the chill of it, most days I barely noticed. Martha visited like clockwork. The twins called her Grammy. She taught Caleb how to perfect a grilled cheese sandwich. She taught Maya the names of every songbird that visited our backyard feeder. I had no idea back then that the green binder would eventually become the most significant document in my possession. More important than my university degree, more important than our marriage license, more important than the public filing documents I would sign 5 years down the road. Year 5, 15 employees, a polished office space with our logo proudly displayed on the glass door, and a conference room with a massive whiteboard that was definitely not from a yard sale. AuditFlow was expanding, not with the reckless, volatile spikes of typical tech startups, but with steady, solid progression. The kind of growth that doesn't make sensational headlines but secures high salaries and keeps the operation thriving. Julian still spent hours coding. He refused to become the kind of chief executive who abandoned the product itself. Most mornings he was at his desk by 6:30 a.m., noise-canceling headphones on, deeply untangling software architecture issues I didn't pretend to comprehend. I managed the entire operational side: cash flow, vendor contracts, quarterly growth projections. The vision was entirely his, the numbers were entirely mine. We purchased our first home that year, a classic Victorian townhouse in the Shadyside neighborhood of Pittsburgh. It had 3 bedrooms, original oak floors, and a fenced backyard with a mature cherry tree that the twins immediately claimed as their private fortress. I remember signing the final mortgage papers and thinking, this belongs to us. Nobody handed this to us. We built it from nothing. Caleb and Maya started kindergarten. They rode the same yellow bus, sat in the very same row, and bickered over who got the window seat. It was normal, beautifully, painfully normal. On a Tuesday evening in late October, I made the mistake of opening my old social media account. Miriam had posted a family photo from a pre-Thanksgiving gathering. There was a brand new cherrywood dining set. Chloe and her husband were there alongside a toddler sitting in a high chair. Chloe's son, my nephew, a child I had never once met. The caption read, "My entire world." 3 people in the frame, a beautiful baby, a grand table, a family portrait that deliberately omitted me, my children, and the husband I loved. I closed the app, laid down, and didn't shed a single tear. I had stopped crying over Miriam Vance somewhere around year 3. Some wounds never fully heal, they just turn to thick scar tissue. Chloe got married in our 6th year. I learned about the wedding through public Instagram posts. The photos were stunning, A historic stone church, the very same Methodist church where I had been baptized at 12, 250 guests in attendance. Chloe in a dramatic cathedral-length lace veil, my mother in a gorgeous emerald gown, my father in a tailored suit I had never seen before. The reception featured a live swing band, a 5-tier cake, and a midnight lantern release that looked like a scene straight out of a luxury wedding magazine. They didn't invite me, they didn't even mention it to me. I found out 4 days after the event when a high school classmate posted a group photo with the caption, "Best Wedding of the Decade." I zoomed in on the image. My parents were standing in the second row, beaming, their arms wrapped tightly around each other. My father looked noticeably thinner. My mother looked exactly the same as she always had. I stared at that photograph for a very long time, not because I envied the lavish wedding. I had already had my perfect wedding, 10 close friends, Greek food, a thrift shop dress, and the most honorable man I had ever known. I stared because they looked completely happy, and they looked completely happy without me. I did something I probably should have avoided. I ordered a beautifully crafted hand-spun wool throw blanket from a local shop in Pittsburgh, monogrammed with Chloe's new initials. I tucked a handwritten card inside. "Congratulations on your wedding. I wish you and your husband a lifetime of joy. Love, Evelyn." The package returned to my doorstep 3 weeks later, completely unopened. The heavy packing tape was entirely untouched. Item 21, wedding gift returned, red pen, dated. I placed the green binder back into its drawer, pushed it shut, and sat quietly at my desk. In the next room, I could hear Maya singing a silly song in the bath and Caleb arguing with Julian about whether dinosaurs could survive in deep space. That was my family, vibrant and alive, right through the wall, and they were more than enough. Our 7th year changed our entire trajectory. AuditFlow secured its Series B funding, $14 million from a prominent venture capital firm based in San Francisco. I distinctly remember the phone call. Julian was in the kitchen flipping pancakes for the twins when his phone lit up. He listened quietly, nodded, hung up, and turned to me with a calm smile. They signed off on it. I did the mental math before the pancakes even cooled. $14 million in new capital with a post-money valuation of $72 million. Julian and I still held a combined 20% equity stake. We weren't wealthy in liquid cash just yet, but the numbers were moving toward a reality I had only ever modeled in hypothetical spreadsheets. I officially resigned from my analyst job that month to join AuditFlow full-time as Chief Financial Officer. It was the very first time my name appeared on the official corporate filings right next to his. We were partners in absolutely everything. We relocated to a larger 4-bedroom home in Mount Lebanon, a beautiful suburb south of the city with excellent schools, tree-lined streets, and a massive kitchen island where the twins did their homework while I reviewed quarterly financial reports on the opposite end. Our Series B funding made a modest splash in the tech world. VentureBeat published a 4-paragraph profile on us. 2 major fintech newsletters highlighted our growth. It wasn't mainstream fame, just the kind of industry coverage that people in our field noticed and everyone else scrolled past. But someone back in Oak Haven, Pennsylvania didn't scroll past. 2 weeks after the article went live, my high school friend texted me, "Hey, this is kind of random, but your mom cornered me at church on Sunday and asked about your husband's software company. She wanted to know what Series B meant, just thought you should know." I read that text 3 times. My mother hadn't spoken my name in 7 years. She didn't have the slightest clue what a venture round was, but suddenly she wanted to find out. The mathematics of my life were shifting and Miriam Vance was paying close attention. That very same year, I sent what I knew would be my final birthday card to Oak Haven. I had sent one every single year, 7 consecutive years, 7 returned envelopes. Each one filed, each one cataloged. But this time I slipped something extra inside, a printed photo of Caleb and Maya at their school's autumn festival. They were wearing matching flannel shirts, their faces painted like tigers. Caleb was missing his 2 front teeth. Maya was laughing so hard her eyes were practically squeezed shut. On the back of the photo I wrote, "They ask about you sometimes. I tell them you live very far away." I sealed the envelope, mailed it, and prepared myself for the inevitable red stamp. It usually took 11 days to return. This time, it returned in 9. But something was different. The paper envelope had been opened. The back flap was noticeably creased and the original seal had been carefully secured with a clean strip of clear tape. I held it up to the kitchen light. The card was still inside. The photo was still inside, but someone had physically removed them, held them, looked at them, and then carefully put them back before returning the envelope to the post office. I sat at the table, turning that taped envelope over in my hands. Someone in that house, my father, I was almost positive, had opened the card. He had looked at his grandchildren's faces. He had held their photo, and then someone else, my mother, without a doubt, had forced him to put it back and return it. He wanted to keep it. She refused to let him. Item 25, birthday card, opened and resealed, photo viewed, still returned. I wrote the label with a hand that was far steadier than I expected. I had suspected for years that my father wasn't the mastermind of this isolation. He was simply the enforcer. Miriam was the sole architect, and her blueprint was incredibly simple. If she couldn't dictate who I loved, she would erase me from existence. By year 8, AuditFlow was expanding faster than we could have ever predicted. We had 80 full-time employees, offices in Pittsburgh and Austin, and active partnerships with some of the largest medical networks in the Mid-Atlantic. Julian's face was featured on the cover of a regional business journal under the headline, "The Quiet Innovator." I noticed some highly unusual activity on my professional networking profile that month. Someone from Oak Haven, Pennsylvania had viewed my profile 3 times in a single week. The identity was hidden behind a private browser, but the regional location was clear as day, Oak Haven. Then, a prominent national business magazine published its annual Top 50 Startups to Watch list. AuditFlow was ranked number 43. It was a brief 2-sentence mention, but it carried massive weight. I didn't think much about the digital footprints until a few weeks later when Julian was invited as a guest on a popular technology podcast. The episode was 45 minutes of highly technical jargon, audit trails, data security, API integrations, federal healthcare compliance. Not exactly mainstream entertainment. But 3 days after it aired, my old classmate texted me again. "Your mom told Sarah at the grocery store that she always knew Julian was brilliant." Direct quote. Sarah said Miriam sounded incredibly proud. "First time she's bragged about you in public. Always knew he was brilliant." 8 years of absolute silence, and now she always knew. I didn't add that to the green binder. It wasn't a physical document, it was hearsay. But I wrote the quote on a yellow post-it note and stuck it to the inside cover. I wanted to remember the exact moment Miriam Vance began attempting to rewrite history. She wasn't proud of Julian. She wasn't even remorseful. She was recalculating. The numbers were getting larger, and my mother was a very different kind of accountant. The group chat screenshots arrived on a Monday evening. My friend Sarah, the one who kept me informed of the local gossip, called me at 7. She sounded visibly shaken. "Evelyn, Chloe accidentally added me to a family group chat. I think she meant to add another Sarah with a similar number. I was in it for 3 full days before they realized the mistake and removed me. Evelyn, I took screenshots. You need to see this." She sent over 7 separate screenshots, 3 days of completely unfiltered Vance family strategizing. I read them while sitting in my parked car during Caleb's soccer practice. "Chloe, his company was valued at $72 million last round. I've been pulling the public business filings. If they go public, we're looking at hundreds of millions, minimum. Miriam, how do we approach her? She won't listen to me. Arthur, maybe I should call first, soften things up, see how she reacts. Miriam, no, Arthur, I need to go in person with a plan, a real structured plan. Chloe, make a detailed list, be highly specific about what we need. She is a finance person. She will only respond to hard numbers. Miriam, how much should we ask for? Chloe, start with your retirement, then medical, then the mortgage. Add college funds for Leo and monthly support. Layer it. Make it look like an investment in the family's stability, not a handout. Arthur, this doesn't feel right. Miriam, Arthur, be quiet. She has more wealth than this entire town combined. she can easily afford to support her family. My father didn't send another message after that. I sat in my car with the ignition off. The dashboard clock read 7:22 p.m. Through the windshield, I could see Caleb sprinting across the grassy field, chasing a soccer ball that looked too big for him. My hands were shaking, not from sorrow, but from absolute cold clarity. 9 years of radio silence. 9 years of returned birthday cards, ignored grandchildren, and a linen letter telling me never to walk back through their door. And now, the very second the numbers changed, they wanted to approach me with a strategic plan. I drove home, printed out the screenshots, and filed them away. Item 28, family group chat, financial targeting and reconnaissance confirmed. If this story is striking a chord with you, if you have ever had a family member freeze you out, only to reappear with open arms when your fortunes shifted, drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, because I truly believe more of us carry these silent wounds than we care to admit. And if you haven't subscribed to their secret stories yet, now is the perfect time. The very next morning, I contacted a reputable estate attorney, not to initiate a lawsuit but to understand our legal exposure. I wanted to know exactly where we stood if Miriam showed up. Did she have any legal avenue to demand our assets or access our children? The attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Helen, walked me through the realities in 20 minutes. No, she stated clearly. Miriam has absolutely no legal standing. Your family trusts are structured to completely protect your children's assets. There is no grandparent visitation rights loophole in Pennsylvania without an active pre-existing relationship. 9 years of documented, active estrangement makes any potential claim completely laughable. I thanked Helen, hung up, and went to work. But later that week, I drafted a personal letter. I didn't send it. I just wrote it out by hand at the kitchen table past midnight. In it, I listed every single item in my green binder, every date, every return package, every ignored call, every screenshot. 31 items fully documented, ready. Year 9, the IPO discussions officially began in January. Investment bankers began flying into Pittsburgh. We held 3 intense rounds of meetings in our glass conference room, the one with the whiteboard that was still technically the yard sale special, though the bankers didn't need to know that. They combed through our financials, our steady growth metrics, and our client retention rates. They threw around terms like roadshow, pricing range, and lockup period. Julian handled the product architecture pitch. I managed the numbers. Every slide, every projection, every detailed risk disclosure bore my signature. CFO, co-founder, the individual who signed off on every federal filing before it left our servers. The entire process consumed 7 months of relentless due diligence, legal audits, and investor roadshows. Julian barely slept, I barely ate. The twins began to notice our exhaustion. Caleb asked why his dad kept talking to a glowing laptop screen during dinner, and Maya drew a picture of me sitting at my desk with a speech bubble that read, "Just one more email, guys." In August, our legal team finalized the ironclad trust structures for Caleb and Maya. 2 irrevocable trusts, fully funded and entirely protected. Nobody, not Miriam, not Arthur, not Chloe, nor any future version of Avance who showed up with a spreadsheet could ever touch a single dime. I signed the final documents on a Tuesday afternoon in a high-rise office overlooking the river. The estate attorney asked if I had any outstanding concerns. I had exactly one. If a biological family member attempts to legally contest or claim access to these funds, what happens? Nothing, she replied with a confident nod. That is precisely why we built it this way. I went home, cooked a quiet dinner, helped Maya with her long division homework, and locked the trust documents securely inside the fireproof safe under our bed. Then, I noticed a strange quietness. For the first time in months, nobody from Oakhaven had viewed my professional profile. No text updates from Sarah about local church gossip. No digital footprints at all. It was quiet, the dangerous, calculated kind of quiet. 2 months prior to the IPO date, Chloe texted me. It was her first direct message to me in 9 years. The notification popped up at 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday. "Hey, just thinking about you. How are the kids doing?" 10 words, 9 years of silence, and then, how are the kids doing, as if she had been checking in every single week. As if this were a natural continuation of a relationship rather than the resurrection of a ghost. I didn't reply for an entire week. I wanted to see if she would follow up. She did. A second text arrived. I'm actually going to be in Pittsburgh for a business seminar next month. I would absolutely love to catch up with you. Julian looked at me and said, "It's entirely your call, Ev." I agreed to meet her, but not at our home. I chose a bustling public cafe in Squirrel Hill. It was neutral, highly public, and had a natural time limit. Chloe arrived 15 minutes late wearing a sharp designer blazer and leather ankle boots. She looked like she had spent hours practicing how to appear completely casual. She hugged me far too tightly and told me I looked incredible 3 separate times within the first 10 minutes. Then she began the interrogation. How large was our new home? Did the twins attend private academy? Which exact neighborhood did we live in? Was Julian still active as CEO, or had he hired an outside executive? How many employees did we have now? Had we taken on more capital recently? 32 questions. I kept a precise count. Not a single one of those questions was, "I am so sorry for how we treated you." Halfway through our coffee, I caught a clear reflection in the cafe's glass window. Chloe was subtly angling her phone toward the parking lot outside. She was taking photos of my car, a sleek white Audi e-tron that Julian had bought me for our anniversary. She was scouting. She was cataloging our assets. She was compiling her report. I let her finish her coffee. I answered her rapid-fire questions with vague, polite, boring responses, the kind you give a polite stranger on an airplane. When we said goodbye, she hugged me tightly again. I drove straight home from that cafe, sat at my desk, and opened the green binder. Item 30, Chloe's reconnaissance visit. Date. Red pen. Notes. 32 targeted asset questions. Photographed personal vehicle. No apology offered. No acknowledgement of past estrangement. Then I called Helen, our attorney, for the second time. "They are coming," I told her. "My mother will likely show up within weeks of the IPO. She is going to present a list of financial demands." Helen was silent on the line for a moment. "Evelyn, do you have documentation of the history here?" "I have a green binder, highly detailed." "How thorough is it?" 30 items, dated, sourced, spanning 9 consecutive years. Another brief pause. "Evelyn, you don't need a lawyer for what is coming. You needed me for the trusts, the asset protection, and the legal separation, and all of that is completely finalized. What you are describing now isn't a legal dispute. It's a personal showdown, and for that you just need to decide exactly what you are willing to say." She was absolutely right. This wasn't about legal maneuvers. This was about a woman who was preparing to step onto my porch solely because my balance sheet had changed, and whether I was going to allow her to rewrite 9 years of cruelty into a simple family misunderstanding. I sat at my desk that evening and pulled out the handwritten letter I had drafted months ago, the one listing every single item in the binder. I read through it slowly. Then I slid it back into the drawer. I didn't need a letter, I had the physical binder itself, 30 items. 9 years, every returned card, every ignored voicemail, every screenshot of their schemes, every piece of undeniable evidence that my family had discarded me, not because of anything I did, but because I chose to love a man they deemed unworthy. The binder would do all the talking. AuditFlow officially went public on a crisp Wednesday morning in October. Julian and I stood right on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. He was in a tailored charcoal suit, I was in a classic navy blazer, and we watched our stock open at $22 a share. By noon, it had climbed to $24. By the closing bell, it sat at $26. Our market capitalization was $520 million. Julian and I held a 10% stake. Our net worth on paper was $52 million. $52 million? I didn't even know how to process that number. It felt like a visual glitch in a spreadsheet, a typo with far too many zeros. "Double-check the formulas," my brain whispered, but the formulas were perfect. I had personally built them, that was my job. VentureBeat ran a massive feature. major financial outlets reached out for comments. A local television station ran a 3-minute segment, Local Couples Tech Startup Debuts on NYSE. They broadcast our official company photo, Julian and me standing side by side, equal partners. We celebrated that night with quiet room service meals in our hotel room overlooking Central Park. Caleb and Maya were safe back in Pittsburgh with Martha, who had flown in to watch them for the week. Julian fell asleep on the couch at 9:15 p.m., still wearing his suit jacket. I stayed awake, not to celebrate the market debut, but because I knew exactly what was about to happen next. I checked my phone. I had 5 missed calls, all from area code 717 Oak Haven, Pennsylvania, 3 calls from an unrecognized number, 1 from my father, 1 from my mother. I didn't return any of them. I placed the phone face down on the bedside table and stared at the ceiling. 9 years of silence, $52 million. And suddenly, Evelyn Vance was a daughter worth having again. I slept with my hand resting near the phone, knowing it would ring again, and it did. My father's voicemail arrived the following morning while I was getting ready. His voice sounded noticeably thinner, older, and far more fragile than I remembered. But his cadence was identical, slow, deliberate, like a man measuring granite. Underneath, though, there was a distinct tremor. "Little bird, I saw you on the television, you and Julian on the stock exchange floor. I didn't know what to say, so I wanted to call. I am so proud of you, Evelyn. I have always been." A long, heavy pause of breathing. "Your mother really wants to talk to you. She has some family matters she wants to discuss. Please give her a call back when you can. I love you, Evelyn." I played it 3 times. "Little bird. He hadn't called me that since I was a teenager. I am so proud of you." 5 words I had spent a decade longing to hear. But as I listened a 4th time, the structure of the call fell apart. He called after the stock market debut, not after our wedding, not when the twins were born, not after any of the 7 birthday cards, the ultrasound photos, or the birth announcements. He called after the $52 million. He was proud of me on paper. He had always been proud of things that looked impressive on paper. What he had never been was brave enough to pick up the phone when there was no wealth attached to the call. "He is not one of us, Evelyn. He never will be." My mother had spoken those words, but it was my father who had actively enforced the silence. He could have dialed my number any day, any year for 9 years. He chose to do it today, the day there were 52 million reasons to call. I saved the voicemail. I didn't add it to the green binder. It was far too tragic for the binder. Instead, I sat quietly on the hotel bathroom floor and allowed myself to feel the weight of it all for a few minutes. Then I stood up, washed my face, and packed my suitcase. We had a flight home to catch. My mother's text message arrived 2 days after we returned to Pittsburgh. It was long, meticulously composed, entirely devoid of typos or casual shorthand. This was a polished draft. She had written it, revised it, and likely read it aloud to herself in a mirror before hitting send. "Evelyn, I know we have let far too much time slip by. I think about you and the children every single day. Life is too short, and I have come to realize that some things are far more important than the personal differences that divide us. I would love to sit down and discuss the future about the children and what it truly means to be a family. There are milestones and support that families should naturally share. I believe we can find a healthy path forward if you're willing to meet." I read it twice, counting the words. 63. Not a single one of those 63 words was "I am sorry." Not a single word admitted she was wrong. Not a single syllable acknowledged that she had disowned her oldest daughter for marrying a biracial man. She wrote the personal differences that divide us, as if our estrangement were a polite political debate rather than a mother telling her child he is not one of us, and returning 7 years of birthday cards unopened. I didn't reply. I screenshotted the message, printed it, and opened the green binder. Item 31, first text from Miriam in 9 years. 63 words, 0 apologies, red pen, dated. I closed the binder, locked it in my desk drawer, and looked at the framed photo sitting next to my monitor. Julian, me, and the twins at the beach, all 4 of us laughing, squinting into the late afternoon sun. Caleb was on Julian's shoulders. Maya was holding my hand. That was my answer, framed right there in front of me. Sarah called me on Friday afternoon. "Evelyn, Chloe is telling absolutely everyone in town that she visited you in your Pittsburgh mansion." Those are her exact words. She's telling people that Julian struck absolute gold, that you drive a luxury electric car, and that the kids attend an exclusive private academy. I leaned against my kitchen counter. Well, half of that is completely incorrect. Our home isn't a mansion and our kids go to the local public school. Evelyn, that's not the point. Your mother is planning a trip. Chloe told the hairstylist that Miriam is traveling to Pittsburgh next week. She's already packing her bags. I closed my eyes. I know. How do you know? Because Chloe spent her entire visit at the cafe counting our assets and photographing my car. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, what are you going to do? I'm going to open the front door, I said. Sarah sounded stunned. You're actually going to let her in? I'm going to let her speak, and then I'm going to show her exactly what I've been keeping in the bottom drawer of my desk for 9 years. I hung up and stood in my quiet kitchen. The kitchen with the massive island where Maya did her math homework, where Caleb built sprawling Lego cities, and where Julian made pancakes every Sunday morning. Martha's photo was pinned to the refrigerator door right next to the twins' drawings. Grammy Martha, the only grandmother my children had ever known. Miriam was coming. I had known it since the group chat leak, since the Series B, since the LinkedIn views and the town gossip, and Chloe's 32 diagnostic questions at the cafe. The mathematics had changed, and Miriam Vance was coming to collect her dividend. But I was no longer the quiet 18-year-old girl who had left Oak Haven with a scholarship and a card that said come home soon. I was a chief financial officer, a mother, and a woman with a binder, and I was ready. The irony was heavy. In Oak Haven, news traveled through the community like water through soil, slowly, completely impossible to stop. When I married Julian, the gossip network had done its work in under 48 hours. Miriam Vance's daughter married someone who isn't like us. The church committees whispered, the men at the local diner shook their heads, and Miriam had weaponized that social pressure. She disowned me largely because she couldn't bear the local whispers. But now, the whispers had completely reversed. Sarah told me, the stylist told Sarah, the church organist told the stylist. Evelyn Vance's husband just took his company public. Evelyn Vance is a CFO. Evelyn Vance is worth $52 million. And Miriam Vance, the pillars of the church and the Harvest Festival coordinator, had disowned her own daughter 9 years ago for marrying him. People weren't whispering in disapproval anymore. They were asking Miriam direct, highly uncomfortable questions to her face. You must be so incredibly proud. When was the last time you visited the grandkids? Are you heading out to Pittsburgh for the holidays? And Miriam had to smile tightly through every single question, because admitting the truth that she had severed ties with her firstborn because of her own prejudice would completely shatter the immaculate social image she had spent 30 years building. The very same town that had enabled her to cut me off was now demanding to know why she wasn't part of my success. The social pressure was reversing, and Miriam Vance, the woman who wielded social pressure like a weapon, was now the one being targeted. She arrived on a Tuesday morning at exactly 10:14 a.m. I know the precise minute because I was standing at the kitchen window drying a coffee mug when the taxi pulled up to the curb. She stepped out slowly, wearing her sage green trench coat, black slacks, and the very same pearl earrings she had worn to church every single Sunday of my childhood. She carried a small, worn carry-on suitcase. She stood on our concrete sidewalk for 30 seconds, completely still, before walking up our front steps. I watched her scan the townhouse, the classic brickwork, the porch swing, the garden beds Julian had planted. She was appraising it like a real estate agent. The doorbell rang. I opened the door. We stood 3 feet apart. She looked noticeably older. There was gray in her hair and deep lines around her mouth that hadn't been there 9 years ago. Her eyes, the exact same green as mine, were already glistening with tears. Evelyn. Mom. A heavy silence fell, 4 seconds. I came to discuss the children's future, she said. Not I came because I missed you, not I came because I made a terrible mistake, not even I came because I love you, just I came to discuss the children's future. The children she had never once met, the children whose baby photos she had returned in taped-up envelopes, the children Chloe claimed didn't have a real family. I looked at her suitcase, then down at the folded piece of paper gripped in her right hand. Come inside. I didn't lead her to our formal living room. I led her straight into the kitchen. The kitchen had a large table. It had bright, honest light. It had our refrigerator covered in Martha's photos and the twins' colorful artwork. The kitchen was where reality lived in our house, and reality was exactly what we were about to face. She sat at the wooden table. I poured her a glass of cold water. No coffee. Coffee was for guests who were staying. She scanned the room, her eyes eventually landing on the refrigerator, on the photo of Grammy Martha holding Caleb and Maya on her lap at the beach, all three of them laughing hysterically. Miriam stared at it for 5 seconds. A complicated shadow crossed her face. I couldn't tell if it was shame or bitter envy. Then she unfolded the paper. In her neat, elegant cursive, she had written 5 distinct bullet points. She read them aloud, her voice steady and practiced. Retirement fund for your father and me, $550,000. I said absolutely nothing. College trust for Chloe's son, Leo, $180,000. I remained silent. Medical expenses for your father's upcoming hip replacement, $50,000. Still nothing. Full mortgage payoff for the family home, $160,000. Nothing. Ongoing monthly family support, $4,000. She folded the paper neatly, slid it across the table toward me, and looked me in the eyes. This is what families do for one another, Evelyn. Your father worked himself to the bone his entire life. He sacrificed everything for you, for both of you. It is only right that you give back now. I stared at the typed list. $944,000, meticulously itemized, calculated, and presented to me like a standard invoice. Not once during her entire reading did she address me by my name with an apology. Not once did she acknowledge that she was sitting in a home she had never visited, demanding money from grandchildren she had actively rejected. Her kids are growing up without a real family, Chloe's words echoed in my mind. I picked up the paper, read through the 5 lines one last time, folded it, and set it down. Then I stood up and walked down the hall to my office. The bottom drawer was exactly as I had left it. I pulled out the forest green binder, heavy, solid, the physical manifestation of 9 years of cold shoulder. I carried it back into the kitchen and set it on the wooden table, right next to her list of demands. 2 documents side by side. Hers, 1 page, 5 bullet points demanding $944,000. Mine, 30 items, 9 years, 0 apologies. Miriam looked down at the heavy green binder. What is that? You brought a list, Mom, I said, sitting back down and placing my hands flat on the table. I brought one too. She stared at the binder, at the neat black labels visible through the clear cover insert, at the sheer thickness of it. Nearly 3 inches of plastic sleeves, printed screenshots, and returned envelopes. I don't understand. You will. I flipped open the binder to tab 1, year 1, and I began to read. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't shed a tear, I didn't put on a performance. I read the entries the exact same way I present quarterly financial audits to our board of directors, factual, structured, and item by item, 9 years of undeniable receipts. I pulled out the very first item, a birthday card in a simple white envelope bearing a faded red stamp across the front. Returned to sender, still sealed. I placed it on the table. Item 1, birthday card, mailed September 12, 2017, returned September 23rd. Miriam's eyes widened slightly. I pulled out the next item. Item 2, wedding photograph, mailed June 14, 2017, returned June 25th. A third, item 3, Christmas card, mailed December 8, 2017, returned December 21st. I laid them out one by one, slowly, like physical evidence in an audit, no emotional commentary, just chronological documents. Miriam's mouth opened, then pressed shut. She stared at the growing row of white envelopes on the table, each one a door I had tried to open and each one she had slammed in my face. These are the birthday cards I sent to you every single year for 9 years, I said. Every single one of them came back. Evelyn, I'm not finished. I flipped to tab 2, year 2, item 4, voicemail transcript. January 7, 2018, duration 47 seconds, no return call. Miriam pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes were wet. Item 5, text message from Dad, February 12, 2018, 4 words, your mother needs time. I set the printout on the table. It has been 9 years, Mom. Exactly how much more time did you need? The tears came then. I had fully expected them. Miriam buried her face in her hands and let out a soft, trembling sob, the exact controlled, theatrical cry she had used my entire life when she wanted to claim victimhood without surrendering her pride. It was the same cry she used when my father forgot an anniversary, or when the altar guild didn't select her recipe. I was deeply hurt, Evelyn, she wept. You chose him over your own flesh and blood. You walked away. I didn't walk away. You ordered me never to come back. I was emotional. People say things they don't mean when they are emotional. I flipped to tab 4, year 4, and pulled out a clean printout. Item 17, text message from Chloe to a mutual classmate forwarded directly to me, March 9, 2021. I read it aloud slowly. Her kids are growing up without a real family. That is the sad choice she made. Miriam flinched. Chloe didn't mean. This is her exact message, word for word. I flipped to the final tab, pulling out the 7 pages of screenshots. Item 28, family group chat screenshots provided by a contact who was accidentally added to the thread, October 4, 2025. I read Chloe's text, make a detailed list, be highly specific about what we need. She is a finance person. She will only respond to hard numbers. Then I read Miriam's response, she has more wealth than this entire town combined. She can easily afford to support her family. Miriam's face instantly shifted. The theatrical tears dried up in a second. A much harder, colder expression took their place, the exact look she gave when Chloe broke her good crystal and blamed it on me. Anger, not remorse. You had absolutely no right to read our private family messages, she hissed. I looked back at her, entirely unfazed. And you had absolutely no right to return photos of my children. The kitchen went dead silent. I reached for one highly specific item from tab 5, year 7. The envelope was slightly creased, the original seal cut open and secured with a thin strip of clear tape. I held it up. Item 25, birthday card, year 7. Inside this envelope was a photograph of Caleb and Maya at their autumn festival. On the back I wrote, they ask about you sometimes. I tell them you live very far away. I laid it down. This envelope was opened. Someone in your house took that photo out, looked at their faces, and then taped it back shut and returned it to the mail. Miriam's jaw tightened. Who opened it, Mom? She said nothing. Dad opened it, I said. He wanted to keep it, and you forced him to send it back. Miriam's hands were flat on the table, her knuckles white. She stared at the taped envelope and whispered something so faint I almost missed it. I was terrified. I waited. If I let him keep it? She whispered, her voice cracking. If I let any of it in, I would have had to admit that I was wrong, that I had thrown away 9 years of my daughter's life for nothing, that I had rejected my own grandchildren because of my own stubborn pride. She stopped, swallowing hard. For a brief second, I saw something genuine in her face. Not a performance, not a manipulation, but real, raw terror. The kind of fear that burrows beneath anger for so long that it forgets how to express itself any other way. But then, the moment vanished, her chin lifted and her posture went rigid once more. But you still left us, Evelyn, you made your choice. The brief flash of honesty dissolved like steam. I placed Miriam's list of demands on the left side of the table. I placed my green binder on the right. Your list, I said, pointing to the left. $944,000, $5 bullets, no apology. I tapped the green cover on the right. My list, 30 items, 9 years of silence, returned cards and ignored grandchildren. A daughter you actively erased because she married a man you refused to accept. Miriam's breath hitched. You didn't travel all this way because you missed me, Mom. You traveled here because the numbers changed. Miriam stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the tile floor. After everything we did for you, the roof over your head, the clothes on your back, your school supplies, This is how you repay your parents. You raised me, I said. That is not a financial debt. That is what parents are supposed to do. You gave me a card that said come home soon and then you locked the door. She had no defense. I could see her mentally sorting through her lifetime of guilt trips and emotional leverage, realizing none of them had any power here. You said he wasn't one of us, I continued quietly, but for 9 years his mother was the only grandmother my children ever had. The words hung heavily in the air. I watched them land. She had absolutely nothing left to say. The automatic garage door rumbled. A moment later, Julian walked into the kitchen, his keys in one hand and his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He saw my mother. He saw the green binder. He saw me. He didn't say a word. He set his bag on the counter, walked over to where I was sitting, placed a warm hand on my shoulder and pulled up a chair next to me. That was it. No grand speeches, no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. Just a husband sitting beside his wife because he knew she needed him there. Miriam stared at Julian, the man she had deemed unworthy 9 years ago. He was wearing a simple flannel shirt, running shoes, and a watch that cost a fraction of her pearl earrings. There was absolutely nothing flashy about him, nothing that screamed $52 million. He was just a decent, honorable man, a devoted father, a loving husband. And he was sitting right here, his hand on my shoulder, saying everything that mattered without opening his mouth. Miriam looked at his hand, at my shoulder, and at the absolute peace between us. She finally understood. I didn't need the Vance family. I had already built a real one. Mom, I said, my voice completely level, I am not going to give you any money. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. Not because I don't have it, but because the very second I sign a check, you will convince yourself that you were entirely justified in staying away until it became profitable to return. You will tell yourself and you will tell Chloe that this is just what families do, that the silence was just a big misunderstanding and the 9 years were just a minor rough patch. I picked up her list of demands and held it out to her. It wasn't a rough patch, it was a calculated choice, your choice. Every returned card, every ignored voicemail, every infant photo you looked at and sent back. She didn't reach for the paper, it sat suspended between us. If you ever want to actually know your grandchildren not as a line item on a financial plan, that starts with a real apology. Not to me, but to them. And it doesn't start today, it starts when you are actually ready to mean it. Miriam slowly took the folded paper, picked up her suitcase and walked toward the front door. She paused, turned back, opened her mouth as if to speak, closed it and stepped outside. The heavy front door clicked shut. It wasn't a dramatic slam, just a quiet final click. The sound of someone walking away, realizing they had traded away something they could never afford to buy back. If someone has ever walked back into your life only after your financial reality changed, I want to hear your story. Leave a comment below. And if this video serves as a reminder that your worth can never be measured by a dollar sign, share it with someone who needs that reminder today. 2 weeks went by. Julian and I barely spoke of Miriam's visit, not because we were avoiding the topic, but because there was nothing left to discuss. She had arrived with a bill, I had presented our history, she had left without an apology. The ledger was officially closed. The twins remained entirely unaware of her visit. They had been at school for both her arrival and departure. I preferred it that way. They would learn about Miriam Vance when they were mature enough to understand that some people only want to see you when your light is shining bright. My father called on a Tuesday morning at 9:14 a.m. while I was reviewing a contract at my desk. Evelyn, your mother told me what happened. I waited in silence. I should have opened that door for you 9 years ago, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. I should have picked up the phone. I should have driven out to Pittsburgh the day those babies were born. I should have done so many things. Evelyn, I am so incredibly sorry, and not because of the money. I don't want a single cent of your money. I want to know my grandchildren. I want to know if you'll let me try. I sat in silence for a long time, 17 seconds I counted. I believe you, Dad, I said. But believing you and trusting you are two very different things. We start slowly. Phone calls every 2 weeks, no visits yet, no money, just talking. He let out a ragged breath. That is far more than I deserve. It is exactly what you deserve, I replied, not more, not less. We said our goodbyes and I went right back to my contract. Chloe sent a single text message later that day. You could have just helped us. I didn't reply. Some messages are their own answer. Miriam never called, never texted, and never wrote. The silence returned, but this time it was entirely her burden to carry. I had said everything that needed to be said. The green binder still sits in the bottom drawer of my desk. 30 items, 9 years. I haven't added a 31st. I sincerely hope I never have to. Here is what 9 years of isolation taught me. Family isn't defined by the people who share your DNA. Family isn't the group that suddenly reappears when your bank account expands. Family is the people who show up for you when your world is small, when your garage is freezing, and when your children need a grandmother. The people who travel across states every 6 weeks, who crochet blankets, and who teach your children how to cook. That is real family, and it was never about the money. It was always about showing up. That is my story. 9 years, 30 items, 1 forest green binder. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you are subscribed to Their Secret Stories, and I will see you in the next mystery.